老板给太多的工作，忙不过来，不满意现况，好烦。这些都是每个人一定会碰到的问题。那与其永远当个 Yes man 让自己累死，不如学着该如何帮自己设界线，专业的 say no。 Hello， 欢迎来到 Executive Plus 主管双语沟通力的 podcast。 我们希望带给大家最实用的沟通工具，包括了成功人士对全球市场的分享，职场英语的技能，跨文化沟通技巧，与其他能帮助您成为出色领导者的工具。Hi, I'm Sherry, founder of Executive Plus. As a language trainer and certified coach, I've trained hundreds of managers from Fortune 500 companies such as Dior, Google, Deloitte, and Yahoo.
And I'm Nick, Director of Communication Strategy at Presentality. I've helped startups raise millions of US dollars in funding and train the executives of publicly listed companies to present on the global stage.
Welcome to the Executive Plus podcast,
where you can take your communication and language skills from good to great. Hey everyone, welcome back to the Executive Plus podcast. Today, we're going to talk about the hard conversations within the workplace, whether it's setting boundaries for things that are making you uncomfortable, or how just to tell your boss or supervisor, no, I can't do that project.
没错，我相信大家一定都会碰到一些这样子的问题，比如说真的是老板丢了一大堆的 project 给你，你已经不知道到底什么事情要先做，什么事情要后做，或者你根本没有办法承担，或者是有一件事情可能是跟你同事之间的问题，这件事情真的非常的让你感到心非常的累。It's something that you really need to talk about it. But again, 这些都是 it's not something that's very comfortable for us to say.But how do we do this so it's more professional and it's a lot easier for us?
Some of the simple guidelines for going in to have these conversations are things we've covered quite often, which is don't go in with blame or pointing fingers. Talk a lot about where you're coming from, your thought process, and how it's affecting you. Because if you go in and start blaming, you're going to get into a debate about what's right and what's wrong, and they may not have the other side. But if you go in and talk about how this has been affecting you or how you think this is a problem for you, it's harder for them to argue your feelings. They can have a discussion about how do we change things, how do we adjust the situation. So let's begin with how to set boundaries. A lot of times we're in a workplace, there's a certain culture within the workplace, and this culture isn't always great. In fact, there's a lot of large companies recently that have been undergoing a lot of issues with their company culture. But it also takes someone willing to have the conversation, not the blame, but the conversation in order to shift this. So when you want to set boundaries, there's a few smoother ways you can do this.
Yeah, you can definitely try to say, I would like to discuss something important with you. I've been dealing with blank for a while, and I'd like to bring it to your attention.
So this is a really smooth way to start a conversation with your boss. If you listen to our last episode, I talked about startups who were getting annoyed with people just quitting and not willing to have the conversation. But by talking to your boss and saying, I have something important to discuss. I've been dealing with this issue, and I just want to bring it to your attention. Sometimes they may just have no idea it's a problem, and this is a polite way to bring it up. Let's look at another phrase. It is something that has been bothering me for a while, and I think it's best for me to discuss it with you in person.
所以有的时候其实很多 issue 你与其用 email 来讲，其实 in person 或者是 talking to them on the phone 当然一定会比较好，因为有的时候在 email 里面他没有办法很清楚的解读你的 tone 啊，你的语气啊，或者是你的字有没有其他的意思，或者他可能会错译。You don't want that, so often schedule something in person would be the best idea to go.
The last part is, I have been feeling quite uncomfortable with this thing. I would like to notify you and get some advice from you if possible. Now, one of the key parts of this is to get some advice from you if possible. If you go in there and be like, you got to change it now, got to fix it, they're going to get defensive.
Yeah.
But when you're expressing like, this has been a problem for me, this bothers for me, and I'd really like to get your advice. I'd really like to talk to you about it. Now it's conversational. When you go in there pounding on the desk, it's confrontational and it's a debate, not a conversation.
Absolutely. 而且我相信当你说 I need some advice from you, no one would say no. Everyone likes to give advice.
Yeah, they're not going to be like, no advice, you suck it up and deal with it. And then, maybe this is not the best workplace for you. Check out our last episode on how to leave. Now, it's always good idea to set boundaries and bring things people attention. For example, in our workplace, I'm known as someone who's incredibly sarcastic. For people who have been here for a long time, they're used to that. But when someone new comes in, or again, maybe I take it too far, it is necessary for people to have that conversation, and I appreciate it more. We always suggest go and have the conversation. Let's jump into the next part, which is how to just say no to your boss.
那这个部分就是当老板一直给你很多不同的 project， 这个老板可能已经忘记你现在在做什么了 But you're busy, you got a lot going on at work, and they're throwing projects at you. How do you say no to your boss?
The inspiration from this, again, comes from another Harvard Business Review video and also our own experience of how you have that hard conversation, how you say no. And there's 3 very simple steps that you can follow. It's acknowledge, have evidence, and then reinforce or renegotiate. So basically this means acknowledge that they're giving you more responsibility. A lot of people will see that as a negative thing, but more responsibility means they have more trust in your ability to do the work, or they believe that you're the person who can do this. So acknowledging that they may have good intentions for offering more work is a good place to start. Then, evidence is more along the lines of show them what you're working on now. Talk about how full your own plate is. Don't just say, oh, I'm busy. Because in their mind, they may think, busy with what, right? Like, I gave you all your projects. I know what you're doing. What they may not realize is there's certain things that you are doing that take a lot more time than they anticipate. Finally, now you can reinforce your no, or you can renegotiate the terms of taking on more work.
Absolutely. 所以其实就是你收到了对方给你这个 request， 你用证据去 back up 你为什么现在这么的忙碌，然后呢，你再来，比如说你可能要加强 reinforce， 或者是你要重新谈判你现在该做的什么的 project. So let's say the boss go, all right, we got some projects on my plate. I really need you to step it up. Could you take a few extra projects off my hands now? So if we follow this framework, how would you answer?
So I would start by saying, thank you so much for thinking about me when taking on these new projects. I'm really excited about working with new clients. But just to update you on a few things that I'm working on. Currently, I have projects X, Y, and Z on my plate, and all of those deadlines are within the next month. Would you like me to reprioritize one of these clients that I'm working for now to take on the new project? And which task do you think that maybe I could push backwards so that we can take on this new one? To give a real-life example of how this works, about 5-6 years ago, I was working for a manufacturing company, helping them build all their overseas brand and marketing materials. And at the same time, I was starting my first business, which was a co-working space. And I was running both of these full-time. Well, for the marketing position where I was working with the brand, I was traveling to 10 to 15 countries per year for different trade shows, to visit clients, to open new markets, to see what was going on out there. And at one point, I actually had to tell my boss, I cannot travel this much because there's no way I can have my own business and work this business effectively if I am constantly on the road. And so when he was actually planning out the next quarter of trips, and there was, I think, 5 different trips that needed to be taken in the next quarter, I had to say no. And it really did follow this process. One of the first things that I had to say to him is like, I really enjoy the experience of going to these countries, seeing new markets, opening up new things, and it's given me a lot of inspiration for how to handle my own business. But currently, just in this company alone, I'm handling this many clients, we're traveling this often, and I still need to get off of work around 6 and go to my own company and work there until 10 or 11, and then wake up, be here at 8, and start all over again. And it's really starting to overwhelm. So, is it possible that I will not take every trip with you? In fact, I will help train someone to make the best out of how we do the trips, how we open new accounts, how we handle trade shows, and split it with them, where perhaps I'm only traveling a half or a third of the amount we did before. That was a conversation we had to where, it cut down a lot of my travel because it was necessary. But it was definitely a hard conversation because he had gotten used to, I am the person that helps him travel.
But there, you pointed out using evidence, like, you actually laid out your schedule at work. It does seem kind of ridiculous that if you have to continue working like that. 而且你也提供了他一个方案 you show them like, okay, why don't we do this? Will that work for you? And you actually offer to train someone else. Yeah, so I think for any kind of bosses or supervisor, they're human, they will understand, and it's a lot easier for them to actually go, I think I'll think about that, or that we should take that option.
Right. And again, this is one of those things where the boss is human. Some people may like, well, your own company is your own time, but for that specific position, I had only agreed to take it because he knew I had my own company and I was working a certain amount of hours and we were going well beyond that. And it's not that he was being mean like, oh, you put my company first. It was more along the lines that because things had worked out so well, he just naturally thought, okay, let's do more. Let's continue the flywheel. Let's continue pushing. And it wasn't until I'm like, okay, I only have 24 hours a day. So we need to have a conversation about this.
Again, 如果大家需要我们刚刚讲的这些 phrases 都会在我们的讲义当中 check it out.
And we'll talk to you guys next time.
Bye.
Bye.
如果你喜欢我们的 podcast, 欢迎来追踪我们的主管英文 Executive Plus 的 Facebook. 那也可以写信到我们的信箱yourcareerplus@gmail.com.